let's go to Kamala's interview last night. So Kamala Harris sat down for an interview last night with Stephanie Ruhle. This was announced by MSNBC yesterday morning. Just announced VP Harris will join host Stephanie Ruhle in Pittsburgh for her first one-on-one network interview since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee. Watch the full interview tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern on MSNBC. And so Eric Schmidt realized, hey, Stephanie Ruhle's doing this interview? Stephanie Ruhle said last week that Kamala doesn't need to answer questions about her policy positions. Kamala then swiftly schedules a fake interview with her. At what point will the legacy media demand more, like maybe a press conference? She's running for president. So, yeah, this was Stephanie Ruhle sparring with Never Trump Republican Brett Stevens on last Friday's episode of Real Time with Bill Maher. So just 5 days before the interview, here's Stephanie Ruhle basically saying Kamala Harris shouldn't have to answer questions from the press in order to earn your vote.
Ask Kamala, say, are you for a Palestinian state if Hamas is going to run that state?
Okay.
Yes or no?
And let's say you don't like her answer. Are you going to vote for Donald Trump?
No, I'm not.
Kamala Harris is not running for perfect. She's running against Trump. We have two choices. And so there are some things you might not know her answer to. And in 2024, unlike 2016 for a lot of the American people, we know exactly what Trump will do, who he is, and the kind of threat he is to democracy.
I don't know.
So it's unclear to me how there could be an informed...
The problem that a lot of people have with Kamala is we don't know her answer to anything, okay?
But you know his answer to everything.
And that's why I would never vote for him, and people shouldn't vote for him. But people also are expected to have some idea of what the program is of the person you're supposed to vote for. You're just not supposed to say, well, you have to vote for Y because X is this, that, and the other. Let's find out a little bit more. And I don't think it's a lot to ask her to sit down for a real interview as opposed to a puff piece in which she describes like her feelings of growing up in Oakland with nice lawns.
Then I would just say to that, when you move to Nirvana, give me your real estate broker's number and I'll be your next door neighbor. We don't live there.
Okay, so that's who gave Kamala the one-on-one interview just a few days before, being like, yeah, look, it'd be nice if she answered questions, but hey, it's not a perfect world, right? I mean, she's not running for perfect. She's running against Trump. And in Nirvana, where politicians answer every question that they're asked and make themselves available for critical interviews during the last month and a half of a campaign, I'll be your next door neighbor in that utopian paradise that you speak of. So,
well, that is the peasant mind. They want you to think like a peasant. You are not entitled to question your leadership. You are not entitled to demand more from your leadership. The underlying assumption that you are expected to make here is that the system is not responsive to your need for answers. And the idea that Kamala represents a defense of democracy. This is somebody who was such a horrible candidate. She had to drop out when she tried to actually run on her own steam before Iowa because she was facing a humiliating loss in her home state where she was running in 4th or 5th place in polls. This is somebody, they whacked out the sitting president who clearly wanted to run again. In favor of somebody who is running without a single vote. That is the defense of democracy.
yeah, no, absolutely. And so here is what was, I guess, one of the highlights from the actual interview. I saw several of the clips from this interview. None of them were particularly remarkable because, look, it's a puff piece interview with a friendly reporter, and Kamala's on script, and so it's going to go how it's going to go. This was one of the most viral moments from it, so we'll play this here.
There was
actually that child tax credit, or expanding that child tax credit, or you mentioned housing before, giving that extra money for a first home. If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
Well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to raise we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. That's just it. It's about paying their fair share. I am not mad at anyone for achieving success, but everyone should pay their fair share. And it is not right that the teachers and the firefighters that I meet every day across our country are paying a higher tax than the richest people in our country.
Bill Gates just said it this week. If he was in charge of taxes, he would have paid more. But how do you find that line to make sure corporations are paying their fair share, but they're not leaving our country?
Well, listen, I work with a lot of CEOs. I have spent a lot of time with CEOs, and I'm going to tell you that the business leaders who are actually part of the engine of America's economy agree that people should pay their fair share. They also agree that when we look at a plan such as mine that is about investing in the middle class, investing in new industries, investing in bringing down costs, invest in entrepreneurs like small businesses, that the overall economy is stronger and everyone benefits.
Okay, so, as you can see there, pretty much a dodge on the question, hey, if the GOP controls the Senate, which I personally don't think is especially likely given some of the polls, and she kind of goes right past that and says, so what Stephanie Ruhle is basically asking her there is, if you can't raise taxes to pay for the things you want to do, will you do them anyway and run up the national deficit? That's basically what she's asking. By the way, I don't see the point if you're going to dress like you're going to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I don't see the point of doing the interview in this weird wood shop or whatever the fuck it is. Like
they want to show that she's in touch with the working people.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do that, like, dress casual. Like, they're dressed like they belong on a 60 Minutes set, yet here they are in this weird kind of location. So that's what Stephanie Ruhle's asking her there. And
it's like Prince Hal going out amongst the people.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so Kamala basically says, well, we have to raise taxes. So that's kind of a way of saying, no, we won't do these things unless we can raise the corporate tax rate, but it's a bit of a dodge. As Nicole Wallace asked Stephanie Ruhle after the interview was over.
Answer. I do, but here's what's a little tricky. She doesn't answer the question around if the GOP is controlling the Senate, if she can't raise corporate taxes, where is she going to get the money from? To expand the child tax credit and do all the things she wants to do. And she says, we just have to do it. And that's great, and that's a campaign promise. But the issue is, if it means we're just going to borrow again, then what we're doing is we're just never addressing the deficit. And back in the days when you were a proud Republican, debts and deficits mattered.
Back in the days when you were a proud Republican, referring, of course, to Nicole Wallace, who was a proud Republican, George W. Bush's press secretary. By the way, Stephanie Ruhle's husband, ultra wealthy hedge fund guy. She's the one who said, I busted my butt to get to Park Avenue, right?
Yeah.
So MSNBC, and I've said this about MSNBC, they're really not a liberal network. They are a never Trump Republican network. They are very much a Lincoln Project oriented network, to the point where this was a real sticking point. Hey, deficits and debts used to matter back when you/we in the audience were all proud Republicans, right? And that's very much the target audience, is like disaffected Republicans who are offended by Trump's bad manners. Now, if you thought that
there's not a hair's difference between the politics of Rachel Maddow and the politics of Nicole Wallace. That's why they're famous friends. What is the real difference between their politics?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, zero. And if you thought that was cringe, I had to pull this last minute, because this was Stephanie Ruhle on Chris Hayes giving another excuse for that non-answer. If you thought that excuse was milquetoast, wait till you hear this one. This is kind of jaw-dropping.
And one could watch that and say, well, she didn't give a clear, direct answer. That's okay, because we are not talking about clear or direct issues.
Play that again.
Work, and one could watch that and say, well, she didn't give a clear, direct answer. That's okay, because we are not talking about clear or direct issues.
Yes, it's okay. She did not give clear, direct answers, because we're not talking about clear and direct issues. Basically, these issues are complicated, and Kamala's not addressing them clearly because there is no clear solution to issues that are so complicated. And if you expect clarity from politicians, it's because you're stupid and you don't understand how complicated the issues are. All of the sudden, by the way, these issues are too complicated to give actual answers on. A few months ago, a few years ago, they were all about being the complete sentences crowd. All about the other side's dumb because they can't answer questions. And now, boom, on a dime, they turn.
Yeah, that I think came from her upcoming book, Zen Cones for Psychopaths.
Yeah.
Now, okay, I did watch the whole interview. I came away from it saying, again, she's probably going to win. Uh, she's only doing these softball interviews, which she's very prepared for. Who knows? It would not surprise me if she's given the questions in advance, because the Kamala that we know is never that prepared with an answer.
Right.
She doesn't seem to veer off into word salads. So it would not surprise me if she knows what the questions are going to be. When you look at the condition the American people are in, what Kamala is really promising more than anything else is the devil you know.
Right.
Very, very much like Biden, basic competence, whether that's true to the reality or not. That is the pitch. Basic competence, basic running the government. At least things aren't going to get worse. At least I'm not going to blow everything up. And also something that really runs counter to the kind of narrative you get on channels like MSNBC that want to tell you that the country is made up mostly of deplorable, virulent racists who need to be put in their place. People like the idea of breaking these barriers. It's actually not a detriment. The people who are not going to vote for Kamala Harris because she's a black woman, they're already not voting for Democrats.
Right.
For the people who are available to them, people like to feel virtuous in their vote. It was part of the secret sauce of Barack Obama, which they're never able to answer. Well, if the country is so racist, how did this guy get elected twice? People like to feel like I voted for the first person of this identity. See, I'm not a deplorable. I'm not one of those bad races. I think that works for her. And I think if you put her next to the consummate old, white, rich heir, Donald Trump, she looks better, I think, to enough people to get her over the line with the kind of campaign Trump is running, which is terrible. Like this interview, yeah, we're watching it and we're saying it has no substance. She doesn't really have to. She seems
Exactly.
plausible. She plays as a plausible president.
Right.
She plays as somebody who's going to be able to. This is the how low the bar is. Kamala came into this having to clear the bar that she's not going to cackle wildly at every question and launch into your refrigerator magnet poetry. That she's actually going to be able to plausibly answer questions. Because, hey, who's president right now? We don't have a president. So the job is to be a spokesmodel for the deep state. And she is conveying plausibly that she can do that for 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, all she has to do is not implode, and you're not going to implode when the person giving you the one-on-one interview is the person here just 5 days ago telling an undecided voter, hey, grow up, she doesn't have to be substantive, right? Like,
Right,
you're not
right.
going to have a viral meltdown moment in that forum. And that's what it would take to really tip the race in Trump's favor at that point. Now, when I say tip the race in Trump's favor at that point, understand we're talking about basically a 50-50 proposition now. I'm not saying Trump needs a miracle to win. Trump could very, very well win. His polling looks pretty strong in the Sun Belt states, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, which means he's just got to crack one of those upper three Midwestern states to win it. Now, will he? We don't know. We don't know. I mean, he's behind in Wisconsin. He's behind in Michigan, not by much, but he is trailing. Pennsylvania is a statistical tie. That's why it's a coin toss right now. The question right now is, what does the electorate look like? Does the electorate look like the rebellion of 2016, or does the electorate look like the exhausted normie turnout of 2022? My gut says it's going to resemble more of the 2022 turnout than the 2016. That's just
And
a gut. I
abortion.
could absolutely be wrong. But that is my gut. And part of what informs that is, yes, the issue that we know drives turnout is the Dobbs issue and the Roe issue. Yep. And so that's why my gut says the turnout's going to look more favorable to Kamala. It could absolutely go the other way. I'm not comfortable predicting definitively either way. But the fact that this is even a question at this point is an indictment of the campaign Trump has won. And the Kamala people are not stupid. Yeah. They got David Plouffe on the team. He was one of the Obama masterminds, very, very smart advisor. They understand that the polls put a generic Democrat above Trump. And so they are running as generic a campaign as possible. And, you know, it's a little sad to see, you know, the MAGA accounts try and make it look like Kamala had a meltdown there. She didn't. Was it a bad interview? Yeah, but it's not disqualifying. And all they're going for is to not be disqualifying. They're saying if we cannot disqualify Kamala between now and November, we got a 50-50 shot.
Right.
Right? And so I think they got a 50-50 shot. I really do.
And if what you're thinking about are normie voters, not terminally online people who watch shows like this, normie voters, that was not a bad interview. That was not a bad interview when you consider what she had to get done in that interview, not melt down, not go into a word salad, and not laugh in a way that makes people hug their children tighter and get under the blankets.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
She did all that. That's all she had to do.
Please clap.